Wouldn't it have been embarrassing to have a painting like that on the front porch? My daughter-in-law Macy, who had sold my prized painting on a flea market app without my permission, stated flatly. My mother had done a colored pencil drawing of Gerberas for me from her hospital bed before she died. That drawing was a memento of my late mother. I know, but I can't hang an amateur drawing because it's too shabby. Do you think you should talk to me like that, even though you are my daughter-in-law? I said boldly, but Macy was unfazed. She drew her arms across her chest and stared at me. Please consider your position. We will be taking care of you in the future, right? It's that deciding line again. So you're allowed to sell my belongings without my permission? I'm your one and only son's wife. Think about how much we are going to take care of you. Macy gave me one more look before walking out the door, her luxury brand shoes clacking. I'd be moving into a new house alone the next day. Macy knew this and sold the painting to harass me. Henry, my son, and Macy, my daughter-in-law, had sold my belongings without my permission before. I was furious but resigned to the fact that I would never get them back. But I'll never forgive her for selling my mother's mementos. Both Macy and Henry, who was always at her disposal, irritate me. I'll completely cut ties from my son and wife when I move into my new house tomorrow. My husband, son, and wife can live in this old house. I am Amy, a 50-year-old housewife. For years, I did all of the housework while working part-time at a factory. I look after my family, which includes my husband, my only son, and as of 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law, Macy. My mother, who raised me as a single mother, died 6 months ago. She left me a large sum of money from her life insurance policy. I took advantage of the opportunity to purchase a small, new house and decided to divorce my husband, with whom I had a strained relationship. The day before I moved in, Macy sold my mother's painting without my permission. When I told my husband we were splitting up, he simply said, "Do whatever you want." During our many years as a couple, our relationship had cooled. I believe neither of us did anything wrong and that what happened was unavoidable. My son and his wife, who lived with us, were the ones who were against my leaving. Who will do the housework if you leave? Aren't you a housewife? I am a civil servant like Henry, so I am not like you who only works part-time. It's appalling to hear a mother throw her family out of the house. My son and his wife both continued to complain as I was packing. First and foremost, why are you buying a house now? It's the money my mother left me, and it's up to me what I do with it. When the insurance money arrives, you should put it to good use for your family. A house where you'll live alone is a squandering of money. She's right. You should have shared grandmother's insurance money with us. Henry's wife was a brand-obsessed woman who never washes a single pair of underwear and is constantly taking dance, yoga, English conversation, and other classes. My son, who is at her beck and call, blames me all at the same time. This was enough for me. My friend Jane, who lives near my new house, invited me over the night I moved in to join her for dinner. My husband is out drinking today too, so I thought it would be perfect. Thank you very much. I still haven't unpacked anything. Jane's house is magnificent. She and her husband both love dogs, so they built a house to accommodate a large dog. In fact, 3 Dobermans are currently resting quietly in the living room's corner. I told Jane about Henry and Macy while eating a hamburger she had prepared for me. What's the deal with your daughter-in-law? And I'm sorry, but your son is also pitiful. Henry used to be a stronger person, but now he's at the mercy of his wife. I'm tired of it. One of the large dogs approached me and nuzzled my feet, as if to console me. It was Hannah, the female of the 3 Dobermans. Hannah is much gentler than my son. All of our dogs are smart and good. Jane used to be a trainer because she's so good with dogs. Her 3 new dogs are large and scary in appearance, but are really gentle and extremely intelligent. They would never attack anyone, but they will bark at uninvited guests if Jane instructs them to. I wish I had a dog as gentle as Hannah is. Why don't you get yourself one? I'll train it for you. Indeed, I am free to do whatever I want as of today. In a new house, you begin a new life. Isn't that right? I thought so too. Macy and I are moving to my parents' house next month. At the end of the month, my son called me with this news. I'd just gotten used to living alone and was starting to enjoy my independence. Your parents' house? Oh, you're moving to Macy's parents' house? No, it's my mother's house. My home? You already live at your father's house. I wasn't sure what he was saying. I talked with Macy. After all, my parents' house is my mother's house, not my father's, and we decided to move to your house. No, my house isn't big enough for the 3 of us. I was not going to put up with Henry and Macy bossing me around and making me do all of the housework. But one of the rooms does have a place to sleep. You can sleep in the living room corner, and we can use that space as our bedroom. Don't be ridiculous. What are you talking about? You want me to sleep in the living room corner? I could feel my face getting hot with rage. We're coming even if you don't like it. I'll start by shipping you a couple of boxes. I'm not going to accept them. Well, then, I'll think of something. Anyway, I'm coming, so please, look after me, Henry said, and abruptly hung up the phone. I don't want this. I despise the idea of Henry and Macy bossing me around and forcing me to do all the housework. That is something I will not allow to happen. The next day, Jane and I went to a family restaurant. I wanted her to listen to my story. I'm sorry, but you have the worst son and daughter-in-law. As she sipped her latte, Jane continued, You must not accept it under any circumstances. You must politely say no. Well, since it is those 2, they might hire a moving company. I don't know what to do. To wash down my pitiful feelings, I drank a sip of jasmine tea. I enjoy this tea, but it is quite bitter. Well, it is difficult to say no when the movers will come. If we're not careful, we might get into trouble. We have to do something to make them not want to come to my house. I can't stand the way they're acting. Well, we could ask my children for help. What, Hannah and the dogs? Hannah, Sun, and Sky are Jane's 3 kids, her 3 beloved Dobermans. My dogs will bark, growl, and act out to some extent on command. I could ask them to scare them away or something. In fact, my son has been afraid of dogs since he was a child. It's difficult to live with a son and his wife who would sell their mother's mementos without permission. So let's come up with something. I agree. Thank you very much, Jane. I felt a little relieved as a result of our conversation. When I returned home, I discovered that my son and his wife were serious. 2 large cardboard boxes had been stacked in front of the front door. These are Henry's and my possessions. We thought you would refuse the courier, so I brought them. We will move in next month, so please keep them in the house. Macy. My shoulders slumped as I read the note attached to the cardboard box. I had no choice but to bring the box inside, and when I opened it, I discovered many of their personal belongings. Henry's imported watches and leather jackets, Macy's designer bags, clothes, and shoes. They must have left behind valuable items I would not discard without permission. What a dirty move. How little they must think of me to sell off my mother's paintings or leave this luggage without my permission. Well, we could ask my children for help. Jane's voice from the family restaurant came to mind. I've occasionally accompanied Jane on dog walks since I settled in after the move. She invites me to accompany her for a change of scenery. She's a great friend to have. It means a lot to me. Why don't you sell their belongings? Macy would sell them on her own, wouldn't she? Yes, even the memento my mother painted. Moon, a male dog, looks at me from the end of the leash I am holding. By the way, why do your son and wife want to live with you? They're both government employees and have money, so why don't they just live together? They don't like doing housework, especially Macy because she's always learning, going out to play, or watching fashion and makeup videos. So you've been doing all the housework by yourself? Yes, my husband never did it, and Henry works overtime and travels a lot, and Macy is the same way. I recall hearing a conversation between my son and his wife on the day I announced my departure from our home. If you leave the house, who will do the housework? Well, you can. No, obviously not. I want your mother to do it. Jane sighed in disgust when I mentioned this. It wasn't until a week later that I received several phone calls from Macy. I finally answered in disgust after she phoned dozens of times. Your house is quite small, right? Yes, that's what I said. Henry said he saw you with 3 big dogs, and I wonder if 3 dogs like that could live in a small house. It struck me. Macy is obviously terrified of dogs. There are people all over the world who are terrified of dogs. One of them is Henry. Jane must have been with me when Henry saw her, but he must have been completely distracted by the dogs. I told you it's a small house. If you're worried, why don't you come back and take a look? I will. I want to check the inside of the house. Macy's voice unraveled a little. She decided that there was no dog in the house. Anyway, I'll be there this Sunday at 10 a.m., Macy said and hung up the phone. Okay. Unexpectedly, I can take my revenge now. On Sunday, Henry and Macy came to my house as planned. You really came? I said I would come. You know, it's because you bought the house on a whim that we're in this messy situation. That's really true. You should have stayed quiet and continued to do the housework like before. Complaining, they took off their shoes and entered the house. Okay, that's it. I opened the living room door, gloating in my mind. Whoa! Ah! The next moment, my son and his wife screamed in unison. There were 2 Dobermans, Moon and Sky, sitting there. What? Are you kidding me? Mother, this dog. These are my dogs. Aren't they cute? Jane, the dog trainer over there, found them for me. Jane, who was sitting on the sofa, stood up and smiled at me. They are so cute because they are well trained. Moon, Sky, how do you say hello to our guests? The dogs barked at the same time. Macy said, "Oh no!" Macy sat down with her head in her hands. Is she that bad with dogs? Oh, they are so cute. Don't worry, Moon, Sky, play with them. At the sound of Jane's voice, the 2 dogs ran over to Henry and Macy, respectively. They raised their paws, wagging their tails as if to say, "Let's play." Stop! Oh no, I'm scared! Macy shook her head and began to wriggle and shake. Moon just invited her to play with him, but Macy doesn't understand. I'm scared of dogs. Macy just lost it and burst into tears, snot running out of her nose. Oh dear, if you're going to live in my house, you'll have to get along with these kids too. Make them stop! This ruined the makeup she had studied on YouTube and was so proud of. Her mascara was running and the lame from her eyeshadow spread to her cheeks. Her tears and runny nose made the high-end foundation look soggy. With this face, she was going to take the train home. Hey, Mom, do something about it. Meanwhile, Henry, who had been jostled by the much larger Sky, fell on his backside and began to scoot away. Sky, thinking that he was playing, happily jumped on Henry. "No, stop it. The dog is too big and scary." I suddenly looked at Henry's jeans and saw that the color of his crotch had darkened a bit. He was so afraid of the dog that he had peed himself. How pathetic. "Moon, Sky, come here." Jane decided it was time to stop and called the dogs. Immediately, the two dogs left Henry and Macy and returned to her. "Moon, Sky, down." With that one word, the dogs lay down at Jane's feet. They really are smart kids. Until now, even though I've been slaving away at my part-time job and housework, you've never helped me. Besides, when I said I was going to leave, you decided to live on your own. Do you think your mother is stupid? I spat out the words I had been holding back as my son and his wife stood up, crying. I left home because I was fed up with you. I am not your housekeeper. But doesn't that mean you have to? He's a well-trained and smart dog, and much gentler than you. Henry and Macy lacked their usual air of bravado. A husband with a wet crotch and a wife whose makeup is a mess. They make the perfect couple. You also sold off my precious things without my permission. I will never forgive you for selling my mother's painting. I said it at once and looked at Moon and Sky, who were meekly lying face down, before looking at my son and his wife again. This, a house with 2 dogs this big, is something we don't want. That's right, we'll give up moving. So give me back the stuff we left behind the other day, then we'll go home. They're still in the boxes in the next room. Take it and get out of here. As I pointed to the next room, Henry and Macy took a wide turn to avoid the dog before opening the door. And, whoa! Ah! They both screamed again and fell on their butts. That's right, because another Doberman, Hannah, was sitting right next to the boxes in the room. Mom, the boxes, please get them. I don't want to. You brought it yourself, so take it yourself. I peeked into the room and saw Hannah just sitting there with a calm expression on her face. I can't go near a dog like that. Then give up your stuff. You mean I should leave it? My bags and Henry's watches are in that box. You also got rid of my precious things without my permission, didn't you? I didn't ask you to leave them behind. I'm telling you, take it with you. Macy just glared at me for a moment. But then, perhaps remembering the dog's presence, she lowered her eyes with a sigh. Please, Mother, bring us the boxes. You and Macy have been making fun of me. You knew how important that painting that she sold off was to me, but you didn't stop her. Well, I'm sorry about that, but at that time, Jane came to me. Hannah, how do we greet our guests? Immediately, Hannah sat down and barked loudly. No! Stop it! Hearing Hannah's voice, the son and his wife must have reached their limit. With his wet jeans and her face covered in smudged makeup, they ran to the front door and got out of the house. After that, I sold all the personal belongings Henry and Macy had left behind to a pawn shop. I discovered that their belongings were of considerable luxury, with Henry's watch having a surprisingly high value and Macy's bag being of a particularly high class. The extravagance of these items left me in a state of dismay. Back at her house, Macy ended up being responsible for all the household chores. My former husband does not like Macy's housework. He constantly complains that the food is bad, the house is dirty, and the laundry is piled up. Macy can no longer go to her lessons because of her housework, and she has gained 10 kilograms due to the stress. And all of her frustration seems to be directed at Henry. Mom, I'm at my limit. Macy finally started hitting me. She's been fighting with Dad all the time. I want a divorce. One day, Henry called me, his voice exhausted. "You chose your own wife, didn't you? You can take care of yourself." Of course, I would not give advice to Henry. I was sick and tired of being involved with that couple. Meanwhile, I bought a female Shiba Inu and asked Jane to train her. "She's going to be a great dog." Jane smiled as she patted the head of the puppy I named Rio. "Really, it's all thanks to you. I'm sorry for making the dogs play such an unpleasant role." "That's okay. When I heard what you said, I was more upset than you were. But from now on, you and Rio can live together peacefully." "Yes, from now on, I will enjoy my life and my time." With this determination in my heart, I gently picked up the puppy.